It makes sense that people desire to be happy. I know I'm not the only one who has frequently wished for happiness to return and hope that it does so right now. But I don't think you should aim for happiness. If you do that, you will immediately encounter the iteration issue since happiness is a momentary state. People become impulsive and present-focused when they are in circumstances that elicit strong feelings of happiness. This translates as make hay while the sun shines. Seize the day and act now while conditions are favorable. However, this is by no means the end, and regrettably, everything needs to be taken into account, to the extent that it is possible. As a result, it is improbable that enjoyment is what would ultimately maximize your life. By the way, I do not doubt its desirability. If happiness finds its way into your life, accept it with wide arms and thanks, though be cautious as happiness can lead to impatience. What could be a more refined substitute for happiness? Imagine living a life that reflects a feeling of responsibility, as this will make things right in the long run. Imagine also that in order to fully display the sense of duty, you had to act honorably, virtuously, nobly, and in relation to a greater cause. The simultaneous optimization of your function and the function of those around you over time would be the higher good. The ultimate good is that. Imagine that you express your purpose as a clear objective and that you give it serious thought. The question then becomes, what is the psychological consequence of that? First, keep in mind that most happy feelings people feel are not the result of doing something. There are two types of satisfaction, one more sophisticated than the other, but nonetheless satisfying, that come from eating a satisfying meal when you're hungry and from completing a challenging but worthy task. For instance, let's say you graduate from grade 12. Graduation day serves as the occasion. It's a festivity. But as that day passes, you are faced with a whole new set of issues, much like when you feel hungry again after a filling lunch. You are no longer the top dog in the workforce or a first-year student at a post-secondary institution. You are no longer the king of your high school. You find yourself in the role of Sisyphus. After much effort and battle to push your boulder to the summit, you have arrived at the base of the mountain. The result of accomplishment is a shift that occurs almost instantly. Similar to impulsive pleasure, achievement will make you feel good. However, achievement is also erratic, just like pleasure. This raises another query. What is a genuinely trustworthy source of positive emotion? The explanation is that when someone is pursuing a worthwhile objective, they feel good about themselves. Assume you have an objective. You have an objective. In regard to that goal, you formulate a plan of action, which you subsequently carry out. Then, as you put the plan into practice, you see that it is effective. That is what generates the most consistent feeling of well-being. Imagine that over time, in a truly Darwinian struggle, the attitudes and behaviors that handle this, the best eventually come to dominate over all others. Imagine that to be true at the same time on a social and psychological level. Imagine that this is happening not just in your life, but also over the ages, as people engage in conversation and elevate one way of being above all others. This suggests a very important point. There can be no happiness without accountability, no worthwhile objective, no joyful feeling. Well, what exactly constitutes a valid goal, one may ask? Envision yourself pursuing an enjoyable, yet fleeting, and unimportant goal. The savviest part of you will be weighing that pursuit against the potential objective of behaving in the best interests of your communities, future selves, and others. It is possible that you are resisting the realization of this understanding because you would prefer to prioritize your immediate, impulsive pleasure above taking on the responsibility. You are deluding yourself, though, particularly in your innermost thoughts, if you think that this kind of avoidance would work. The old and wise elements of yourself are deeply worried about your existence and are difficult to ignore or trick. Despite your lack of concern, you aim for a pointless objective and devise a superficial plan to achieve it, just to discover that it is unsatisfying. You don't care about it, not really. Moreover, you are experiencing guilt, humiliation, and a sense of inferiority since you are not pursuing the objective that is rightfully yours. This is not a wise course of action. It won't be successful. When someone understood they weren't doing what they should be doing, I have never met someone who was content. Being temporally aware beings, we are aware that we are inescapably engaged in an ongoing game that we are unable to escape. Regardless of our desire to ignore the future entirely, it is a necessary cost for having a keen sense of self and the capacity to imagine who we are for the duration of our life. It is what we have to deal with. The future cannot be avoided. Thus, the best course of action is to willingly turn around and face the situation when you are stuck with it, and there is no way out. That functions. Consequently, you set a much more expansive goal, namely acting appropriately in regard to everyone's long-term interests, instead of your impulsive short-term one.